Thanks for staying with us. Now, the Judicial Service Commission has been conducting interviews for various vacancies for judges at several courts across the country. Previously, the JSC has been criticised for its line of questioning and the conduct of certain commissioners. Today, interviews were conducted for judges for the Western Cape. To discuss how the interviews have been going so far, we are joined by Mbekezeli Benjamin from Judges Matter. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. I saw you just a short while ago because I was also at the interviews. But let me just start off by asking you about this time around, how the interviews have been going, because we do know that there's been a lot of criticism about the kinds of questions that were being asked and the conduct of certain commissioners.
Yeah, Heidi, the JSC was heavily criticized in the past for the kind of questions that they were asking candidates. We as Judges Matter have, for a very long time, been calling for the JSC to develop some sort of rubric or criteria that they can use to measure the candidates. Finally, we are told that the JSC is working on criteria, but in the meantime, they are working with the commissioners to try and get a much better JSC. And I can say over the last 5 days, we've really seen an improved JSC. The kinds of questions that they've been asking the candidates have been much more focused on the law, on their legal experience, and their ability to become High Court judges, which is essentially what the JSC is for. So we've really been impressed by the progress that we've seen at the JSC over the last couple of days.
Yes, I'm sure many would say that this has probably been the best round of interviews that have been conducted, with candidates not being subjected to questions that they were not told about beforehand, but also being asked about allegations without providing sufficient evidence. And I want to ask about the line of questioning. So, yes, the behavior has definitely improved and changed this time around from commissioners, but it's also about the line of questioning, because there was also criticism about the kinds of questions that were being asked to the various candidates, and it seems this time around they actually looked at the work of various judges and magistrates and posed specific questions to each candidate, and not just random questions or allegations without any evidence.
Yes, absolutely. The questions that have been asked, I can even highlight one particular commissioner, which is Wits Professor Clement Marumachai. He seemed to have gone through all the candidates' judgments. He's been able to ask pointed questions, really tough questions of the candidates based on their written work, which is exactly what a JSC interview should be about. We should be looking at your experience, what kind of judgments you've written, what kind of legal work that you've done in the past that would make you ready for the job of a judge. And that's something that we've seen, even in candidates, even for some candidates who seem to look good on paper, but when they got to the JSC, they faced questions from a number of the commissioners, from the lawyers to the judges, to even the politicians who were asking really relevant questions of the candidates. So overall, the line of questioning seemed to be a lot more focused. The questions were tough and they were quite rigorous, but at the same time, they paid attention to the dignity and respect of the candidates.
Yes, I want to ask you about today specifically, and the reason why I ask this is because candidates were being interviewed for the Western Cape and for various judges for the Western Cape, and many were wondering whether or not Judge President John Hlophe would be in attendance and whether or not he would be part of the commissioners asking the questions. And I ask this in the context of what is currently unfolding with a number of judges from the Western Cape, given the allegations, given the decision that needs to be made by the JSC, and also the decision made, possible decision made by the President with regards to possible suspension or impeachment sitting with Parliament when it comes to Judge President John Hlophe. What was your assessment of the JP being there today and his line of questioning, given he is the Judge President?
Well, look, the first starting point is the Constitution. Section 178 of the Constitution says that the Judge President of a High Court must be present during the interviews of that particular High Court. So there is a long line of cases from the Constitutional Courts that reiterate that the JSC must have a Judge President present. So in this interview, Unfortunately, Judge Hlophe had to sit in them. He could have sent an alternate, but because the president has for 9 weeks now not placed him on suspension or taken any decision on the JC's recommendation to suspend him, there was really nothing stopping him from being in the interviews today. And from his participation, I think he did add some value. The kind of questions that he asked of the candidates, some of which were really, really important. He was able to highlight the experience of the candidates when they were acting as judges in the Western Cape High Court. He was also able to draw out some of their other experience, so out of court experience, and in particular their work in trying to transform the legal profession. So I'd say overall he did make some valuable contributions, but of course there is a cloud hanging over him in terms of the possible suspension that he might face from the president.
Yes, and I know that the Sunday Times did report this past weekend that a response from the presidency is that this matter is receiving all the necessary attention. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what comes out from the presidency and if a decision is going to be made about Judge President John Hlophe. But thank you so much for your insights. We really do appreciate it. That was Mbekezeli Benjamin from Judges Matter.